A group of teenagers stood outside a busy cafe, laughing loudly, their voices cutting through the calm afternoon. In the middle of it all, a young boy stood quietly, watching them, his hands slightly trembling. His father stepped forward and said something that made everyone pause. "Go ahead, talk to my deaf son." They laughed again, mocking, careless. But just seconds later, their smiles faded. Their laughter died. And what happened next left them completely frozen. Before we dive into this powerful story, take a moment to support the channel. If you believe kindness still matters in this world, hit that subscribe button, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments. Welcome to Kindness Story Hub, where real emotions meet unforgettable stories. It was a bright Saturday afternoon in a small American town. The streets were lively, people walking their dogs, families enjoying ice cream, and the smell of fresh coffee drifting from a cozy cafe on the corner. David Parker sat at an outdoor table with his 10-year-old son, Ethan. Ethan was different, not in a way that made him less, but in a way that made him quietly extraordinary. He was deaf. But Ethan didn't see himself as limited. He loved drawing, smiling at strangers, and watching the world with eyes full of curiosity. His father, David, had raised him alone since Ethan was a baby. Life hadn't been easy, but they had each other, and that was enough. David gently tapped Ethan's shoulder and signed something to him. Ethan's face lit up instantly, and he nodded with excitement. They had just finished lunch, and Ethan wanted to show his dad a new drawing he had made earlier that day. As Ethan pulled out his sketchbook, a group of teenagers approached the cafe. Loud, energetic, and full of attitude, they took the table right next to David and Ethan. At first, it was harmless chatter. But then one of the teens noticed Ethan signing. "Yo, what's he doing with his hands?" one of them said, smirking. Another laughed. "Looks like he's casting a spell or something." David heard them. He kept his composure, but his jaw tightened slightly. Ethan didn't hear the words, but he saw the laughter. He saw the pointing. And slowly, his smile faded. David's heart sank. He had seen this before. The silent confusion in Ethan's eyes. The quiet question, "Why are they laughing at me?" One of the teenagers leaned closer, waving his hand exaggeratedly in front of Ethan's face. "Hey! Earth to you," he said loudly, mocking him. The group burst into laughter. That's when David stood up. Calm. Steady. But firm. "Why don't you talk to him?" David said, looking directly at them. The teens smirked. One of them shrugged. "What's the point? He can't even hear us." David took a step closer. "Exactly," he said quietly. "But he can understand you better than you think." They exchanged confused looks, still half smiling, unsure if this was some kind of joke. David turned to Ethan and gently signed something. Ethan nodded, stood up, and faced the group. The laughter hadn't completely stopped yet, but it was about to. Ethan took a deep breath and began signing. His hands moved carefully, confidently. His face showed emotion, expression, strength. Of course, the teenagers didn't understand sign language. At first, they just stared. Then David spoke. "He's asking you a question," David said. The group went quiet. "He's asking why you laughed at him." The words hung in the air. No one spoke. David continued, his voice calm but heavy with emotion. He wants to know if he did something wrong. If he looks strange. If being different makes him funny to you. The smiles on their faces slowly disappeared. Ethan kept signing. David translated again. He says he knows he can't hear, but he can feel. He can see people's faces. And he can tell when someone is being kind, or when they're not. Now the laughter was completely gone. One of the teenagers looked down at the ground. Another shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Ethan signed one more sentence. David's voice softened. He says, he just wanted to show his dad his drawing. Silence. A deep, heavy silence that seemed to press on everyone's chest. The same boy who had been laughing the loudest just moments ago slowly stood up. "Wait, can I see it?" he asked quietly. David looked at Ethan and signed the question. Ethan hesitated for a moment, then nodded. He opened his sketchbook and held it out. Inside was a beautiful drawing of a park. Trees swaying in the wind, children playing, a father and son sitting on a bench, smiling. The detail was incredible. The emotion, even more so. The teenager stared at it, his eyes widening. You made this?" he asked. Ethan nodded. The boy swallowed hard. "That's really good," he said, his voice almost breaking. One by one, the others stood up and came closer. They weren't laughing anymore. They were listening. Watching. Feeling. Another teen spoke up. "I'm sorry, man. We didn't mean." He stopped, unsure how to finish the sentence. David gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "Sometimes," David said, "you don't realize the impact of your words until you see them through someone else's eyes." The boy nodded slowly. Ethan looked at them, his expression soft but cautious. David signed something to him again. Ethan smiled slightly. Then, something unexpected happened. Ethan extended his hand. Not in anger. Not in fear. But in kindness. The same boy who had mocked him just minutes ago looked at Ethan's hand, then shook it. "I'm Jake," he said. Ethan couldn't hear him, but he could read his lips. "Ethan," he signed back. David translated. A small moment. But a powerful one. The tension melted. The group sat down again, but this time, the energy had changed. They weren't loud anymore. They weren't mocking. They were asking questions. "How do you talk to him?" one asked. David smiled. "Like this," he said, showing them a simple sign. Ethan laughed silently as they awkwardly tried to copy the movements. For the next 20 minutes, something beautiful happened. A group of teenagers who had come in with arrogance and carelessness, left with understanding and respect. They learned how to say hello. They learned how to say friend. And most importantly, they learned how to see. Not just with their eyes, but with their hearts. As David and Ethan got ready to leave, Jake spoke again. "Hey." "Ethan," he said slowly, trying to pronounce it clearly. Ethan turned. Jake hesitated, then used the sign he had just learned. Friend. It wasn't perfect. But it didn't need to be. Ethan's face lit up. He signed it back. Friend. David watched it all, his eyes slightly teary. Because in that moment, he knew something had changed. Not just for Ethan, but for those kids too. As they walked away, Ethan reached for his dad's hand. David squeezed it gently. No words were needed. Because sometimes, the most powerful conversations don't need sound. They just need understanding. So the next time you see someone who seems different, pause. Look again. And choose kindness. Because a small moment of cruelty can leave a deep scar. But a simple act of kindness, it can change a life forever. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness still exists. This is Kindness Story Hub, and your next act of kindness might be the one that changes everything.